Welcome to Still Plays Galaxy Heroes. We're back with another talk video. This time we're breaking down the Cal Kestis kit. Standard stuff we do here. Look through the developer insights, break down and analyze what we see in the kit, explore the synergies, and then wrap up with the free-to-play gearing of my roster. We're taking the first steps on the Cal Kestis hero's journey with both a Cal and Synergies release, because CG really doesn't want me to do any work this week, but the Synergies video is going to come out in a couple days. We'll stagger it with some of the Grand Arena video releases. With Cal, we get a light side support unaligned force user who looks to add control survivability and more unaligned force user functionality. The biggest thing with him and Synergies is that they are designed to be slow, which is something I have been waiting for. There's a handful of slow mods I've been holding on to take advantage of characters like this, because CG has dabbled in slow characters before, but never to this extent. And this time it's going to be pretty critical to ensure that you do actually have mods without speed on these characters. I do wonder though if it will minimize some of the plug and play viability of these kinds of characters. CG does give us a bullet here on BD1, and I think we're all happy that BD is coming to the game. Lucasfilm knows what they're doing now. I'm glad that they've learned from the Jar Jar Binks error, where they thought they needed a kid-friendly character when really all we just wanted was space puppies. The other information that CG highlights, Synergies, whose kit we'll get into in the next video, will be the leader. And they do mention here that Cal can go into a Star Killer squad while we wait on her, and it's going to be about 2 weeks. Which, that was the first thing I was wondering when I saw his tags. Because if you see my Star Killer squad, I have a Gear 12 Visas, and she's pretty replaceable. She doesn't contribute really much for my Star Killer squad other than activating his kit and then dying, and my squad works just fine. So being able to look at beefing that up in the short term while also working on a journey character, that might be a nice temporary move for me, and I might delay my visas a little longer. Although once we do have more of the pieces for Cal, that is something I will get back to. There are a couple pieces of information here in the frequently asked questions that normally I skip this, but this I do think is interesting. They make it clear here that the version of Cal we are getting as the hero's journey character is the Jedi Survivor version of him, which means we're definitely going to have to wait until that game gets released. It's already been delayed once. I doubt they're going to delay it a second time, but we're definitely not going to get him in game until that game has been released, because they're not going to want to spoil any powers or abilities, and I'm sure there's been some information sharing going on. And the biggest thing here is the journey event will require Gear 12, and this has me pumped. CG should do way more of this. I've been advocating this in a lot of videos. My biggest problem with high floors is it creates a flattening of our rosters where we all have the same characters and the same gear and relic levels. And I think it is a very good thing here where we have some room to create a lot of variance in other game modes. Really, just Grand Arena is what I care about. It'll create some variance there where we can face different things, and it will be a little bit more dynamic and interesting. But beyond that, it's really a mechanic to encourage players to join the game. These kinds of big additions to the game do generate a lot of interest from players who quit to return, or players who are a little younger and not familiar with the game, maybe aged up into the age bracket that does play this game a little bit more seriously. And now for the kit breakdown, we're not going to read through everything in detail. That's not what we do here. We just like to focus in on the key information to simplify our understanding. So it's physical damage to the target, inflict defense down, and speed down. That speed down is going to be important, so pay attention to that. And while Cal is at certain health thresholds, he gains different benefits. While at or below the following: 75% health, he gains health steal up. At 60% health, he attacks again and inflicts crit chance down. And at 40% health, he attacks a third time inflicting daze. Now, we've seen smaller versions of this in the past, but I really like what we're seeing here with the damage thresholds, because we're going to want to either ignore Cal or focus down on him to prevent these mechanics. He's going to become increasingly dangerous as he loses health, and that should make him a threat, particularly on offense, since the defensive AI tends to not be very focused, spreading attacks around, which could mean more time where Cal is in a position to utilize these bonuses and be a more significant threat. With the second special here, Help Me BD1, this is a cooldown of 3, and this is cleanse the target ally and the target recovers 45% health. If the target ally is already at full health, they recover 30% protection, and if the target ally is full health and full protection, then grant them crit hit immunity, and if that target is light side, they're going to gain accuracy up. Now, the health and protection recovery, that's nice, but with the cooldown, the benefits at full health and protection are going to be extremely fringe. So I'd rather hold off on this ability and wait until I need to use it rather than try and get some negligible buffs from it. Because, and we'll talk more about this in the Serjunda video, because she has an ability that will grant damage immunity to the weakest character, which will make sure that they aren't eliminated from the battle. But then I'd like to have them work in conjunction with each other, where Serjunda takes her turn, gives the damage immunity, then Cal swoops in and heals them up to make sure that they remain in. Now, the second special, Not So Fast, this is a cooldown of 3, and it is a Zeta ability. We're going to approach this a little out of order because CG writes this in a way which I think obfuscates a little bit of what's going on here. But it's an AoE, inflict, evasion down, speed down, tenacity down. That's the debuffs on the opponent, and I said from the basic, pay attention to the speed down mechanic, because what we have here with this AoE is a 2-turn speed down. Now, if an enemy already had speed down, they are stunned. So we can't rely on this ability going back to stun anyone on the field. We're instead going to have to wait on the basic in order to get that speed down applied to then use the stun. But that's only a single target ability. So the opportunities here to exploit this stun are going to be a little limited. And I think what we're going to end up seeing is either the Jedi Survivor version or other character kits are going to add either additional speed down or an AoE speed down, so that Cal is going to be better positioned to take advantage of this, because this ability here is going to be a little muted from what I think is going to be its larger intention. And it's something that I looked at Mara's Jade kit right away to check what debuffs she applied, because she was the only one who is going to be applying a large amount of debuffs. And when it comes to the unaligned force users, only JTR right now is going to be applying speed down, and that's going to be single target. So at most, when you use this ability, maybe you're stunning 2 characters. Alternately, we could see somebody come along who manipulates cooldowns so that 3-turn versus 2-turn discrepancy isn't an issue, but that's part of this larger nesting dial effect that CG tends to think about when it comes to these kits, and that I'm trying to always be on the lookout for. Now, the unique ability, I'm Persistent, this is a Zeta and an Omicron ability, and Cal here is going to have a Territory War Omicron. At the start of the battle, all unaligned force users gain 30% max health and 30% tenacity. This is a type of mechanic that is great. I'm always on the lookout for, because it makes older characters more viable. And they showed in the Synergies portion characters like Scavenger Ray. This type of stat sharing is what's going to make it a little bit more viable for her, because she's a fairly easy character to knock out. This will just make it a little bit better. Whenever an ally is critically hit, they and Cal recover 5% health and protection. If the ally is also a light side or dark side unaligned force user, they and Cal will gain protection up. One thing that I think we could be on the lookout here for is something like SWGOH Omicron, where he self-inflicts vulnerable. It's something where one of these future characters could do a similar thing, which would then help facilitate this health and protection recovery. Another thing that I'm going to be paying attention to as these additional kits get released. Up next, for each special ability used by each other character, Cal gains a stack of persistence. If an opponent takes the first turn in an encounter, Cal gains 15 stacks of persistence. So not only are we going to want to make sure Cal is slow, we're going to want to make sure that the opposing team is going first. Now, this is something that with Serjunda and how that kit is designed, something that is not going to be a huge issue as we get all those characters. But in the interim, if we were to place him with like a Starkiller squad, for instance, it might mean that we slightly slow down some of our Starkiller squads so that they aren't going first, so that we get this bonus here with the persistence. I'm actually not going to do that, but it's the type of thing to be paying attention to as we try and utilize him. At 3 stars, it's not going to be great anyway. And by the time he's at 7 stars, we'll have, at least for us free-to-play players, we'll have the additional characters at low stars, and we can put something together, and I'll be showing you guys here whether or not we can use something below 7 stars at that farming stages at that gear 11 level that I like to showcase here, which we actually have shown with the Tuskens works out just fine. Persistence. At the start of his turn, Cal does the following based on the number of stacks of persistence. Think of this kind of like momentum. It's not exactly an inverse of it, but in the way that momentum has different functionality based on the character that is granting it or the character that is utilizing it. The Sign of Django does not have the same momentum as the Tuskens. Persistence, right now we only have one character, but from how I'm reading this, I would think that persistence is not going to be the same on each character that is going to be utilizing it in the future. Now in this case, 10 plus stacks, he and all unaligned force users gain foresight. 20 plus stacks, the same gain defense up and protection up. At 30 plus stacks, AoE inflict, ability block, and buff immunity, which is unevadable and unresistible. All allies will then gain 50% turn meter. That effect will be doubled for light side unaligned force users, and the stacks of persistence will reset. Now, the Territorial War Omicron, small functionality, but it is good and important. It fully activates the Fulcrum Omicron, eliminating the solo condition where the other characters need to drop out before it becomes good. Now, it's a Territorial War Omicron, and it's one that I think is fairly skippable. And considering how expensive Omicrons are, we'll talk about it in the Serjunda kit video. That's an Omicron that is as close to a no-brainer as we get in this game. That's an excellent Ami. Now, when it comes to synergies, this graphic can generally be disregarded, especially when there's a number of character options in a faction. In this case, there's a decent amount, but I think it's an interesting starting point for discussion, and I like to give some thoughts on a few of these. One, Fulcrum is just a character that I like. I like all versions of Ahsoka, so to have a version of her that might be viable in Grand Arena, that is something that I'm looking forward to do too. Like, I'd like to put relics on her. It's just there hasn't been a lot of reason to do so at this stage. Like, you can use her with an Akbar squad, but a lot of these uses right now are in that luxury stage where I'm not going to go out of my way for them. I'm looking for more immediate impacts, where this Cal has the potential to elevate her to a character that does have an immediate impact. The next one I want to highlight, Barriss, because Barriss is weird. I think what they're looking at here is the unique ability where this is going to give some additional healing, but what I don't like here is the turn meter. The health is great, it's going to make things more survivable, but every time they're dispelling buffs, they're going to be gaining turn meter, and when there are critical hits, Barriss will be gaining turn meter, which that portion's fine, but the debuff functionality is just going to mean that it's going to be harder for Cal to gain stacks of persistence, and that is something where I don't think she should be part of the consideration. I think it makes more sense to put Barris with Starkiller and then take Visas from Starkiller and place Visas with Cal, because of the revive mechanic is going to do some nice things with a Cal squad as well. It just depends on who she's going to help out more. Now, one thing you're probably definitely going to see me do, especially while we're waiting for Serjunda, is I might be putting Cal under a JTR lead with Swallow. That squad has been great in 3v3 as I use that JTR R2 Ben Swallow lineup. But in 5v5, I've never had great 4th and 5th options. So Cal will give me one, and I can also pair them with Scav Ray as they indicate. And then we get a decent hybrid unaligned force user resistance squad that I think could be very interesting. And with Ray, she has enough buff synergy, and with the extra stats, she's going to be a little bit more of a threat. And with Serjunda, there's some offensive stat functionality that will make her even more of a damage dealer. But really, whether or not I will be investing in Ray is going to be completely dependent on what we're able to discover during testing. Now again, with JTR, what I liked with her was the speed down. That way you're able to stack that speed down abilities with Cal, because she can apply one, he can apply another. So when you do use the AoE ability from Cal, he has at least 2 characters that he can be stunning. So moving forward, obviously Serjunda, when she's in the game, that's where I'm going to be testing and utilizing Cal up until the Hero's Journey event. But in the interim, and we're going to have a little bit of time to do that, I'll be testing out both Starkiller and JTR scenarios, but it's really probably going to be JTR where you see me using him more, because at the low stars, I'll be fine if I lose Cal in a battle and he doesn't contribute, whereas it's a little bit more important for me that Starkiller stays functioning. I'm not going to be purchasing shards or getting the head. I'm just going to be dealing with a 3-star Gear 11 Cal for a month until he becomes farmable. For our wrap-up, today's gearing is from January 9th. This one's a little bit of a longer one, a little bit more involved. So what we have here is a lot of Jabba stuff, because this, at the start of January, is when we went after Jabba. Now, Scythe, the conquest was over, so we unlocked Scythe. I get all conquest characters and unlocks at the full amount right away. I take it very seriously, also take the datacrons pretty seriously. Just taking this up, getting it to a testing place. The way that I'm using Scythe right now is to take out any squads basically below the profundity and executor level. Now, there are ways to do it. It's a little bit more RNG dependent or compromises other fleets, so I'm happy to use it as a second tier counter. Although I don't know how much I've used it up against the Malevolence or the Negotiator. I think I did the Malevolence once and it was fine. Negotiator I'm not as sure about. But I use it up against Empire, Finalizer, Rebels, and it's been fine. It's a great ship. And the lineup I've been using is Gauntlet with the TIE Fighter and Scythe with Defender in the reinforcements. Now, Swallow here, we are taking up to Relic 7 because I'm helping out the guild with platoons and territory battles, but also he's just been pretty solid. He's not amazing. Well, he's amazing with Ray, but for my purposes as a player without Ray, he's been doing a lot to elevate what I can do with JTR. Now, I need to put those Omicrons on, but without them, he's great. It's really just his unique functionality. Now, here's the status of these farms and characters. You can see all the Jabba I have everybody at that gear 11 floor, and I just wait until I have all the gear before I take these characters up. Now, I don't know if I went fully for Jabba at this point. I think I wanted to do a week of gear 12 testing on the Hut Cartel, and so the other characters and requirements, those are the ones that I'm going to be bringing up to relics. Yeah, just so going through all these characters, taking them up in a couple stages, seeing where I am with. I mean, I keep all this stuff in spreadsheets, so I know I'm fine with gear. Looks like Ewoks. I'm doing some luxury stuff, just taking some remaining Ewoks up to gear 12, going with Law Gray. Chirpa's cheap, but it looks like I'm not doing it this week. And I guess maybe I'm not doing the rest of the Hut Cartel this week either. Canderous is important for Datacrons. I haven't been able to use some of the higher level Datacrons with Maul or Bam because of his level and for territory battles. Give myself a 5th. Savage was just a character that I was just testing out in various stages. Relic 5 is where the CLS counter becomes an option. Below that, I wouldn't be doing it. The Serjuna video will come in a day or so, but what I want to highlight is the Grand Arena video in the corner. This was a great match. My opponent, SK, put down a really tough defense that had been preventing a ton of full clears, and he was a fellow 3GL player. So if you want ideas as a player who doesn't have as many GLs as your opponents, this guy knows what he's doing. He's put down some great defense that have stymied almost everybody, and I think it was a great accomplishment for me to find a way to get through this thing. Pretty proud of that match. It's one of the best matches I think I've played. So check that one out. If you haven't, at least check it out for that guy's defense, because it is worth learning from. So thank you for watching. Be safe out there, everyone, and be excellent to each other. This still plays Galaxy of Heroes, and I'm going to go watch The Mandalorian.